We think of it in singular terms. Is the body well or not? This way of looking at things, I believe, has resulted in a mental and social health catastrophe. Did you know, and this is not across the board, but did you know that many of those who are unhoused also suffer from mental illness? This is not across the board. But I see Sharon shaking her head, so you know. A lot of people don't know that. And it's very likely that there's a correlation between that and their homelessness. And one of the reasons for this, one of the main reasons that they're likely living without housing is because of the lack of mental health facilities and resources available to them. Now, I point out mental health resources. There are lots of physical resources that we offer. Mental health, though, not so much. Even for those of us with insurance, many of them only cover a tiny portion of any kind of mental health assistance. So I remember quite some time back, this is a story from a previous parish. There was a situation where there was an individual in the community that was clearly not mentally well. My novice, bare minimum psychological training that I get as a licensed local pastor led me to believe that I think he had some kind of schizophrenia. I think I'm probably accurate on that. I just not sure on what kind. There's kind, and some are more troubling than others. And the church that I was serving in at the time, when this individual would come to church, a lot of people would become agitated and nervous and afraid because his behavior was atypical. We didn't have folks who would, help him and help him be relaxed and comfortable and be able to enjoy worship. And I remember as a result of this, and please hear the whole thing before you cast judgment on me with this. Small town, I reached out to the authorities. And I talked to them and I said, what would it take for us to get this man in the hospital? The hospital, 20 minutes away, they did have a mental health ward. What would it take for us to be able to get him there so that, because he was malnourished, he was living, where he was living was not a good place for him to live. And you know what I found out? The way the law works, some of you probably know this, but so those of you that don't, the way the law works, this is how it goes. A person must either be an imminent threat to themselves or someone else, meaning they are about to do a thing, or they have to have already done the thing. And that grieves me because by that point, the damage is already done, both to themselves and to whoever is around them. This individual was in danger. I was actually more concerned about him hurting himself than really hurting anyone else. But that was a concern as well. And in short, we have hamstrung our ability to help those with mental illness. And the result is a social sickness of homelessness and mental health decline that is not getting any better. I bring this up to point out that there are indeed many metrics, meaning ways of measuring health. Health is not only about how well the body is. I have known people who are physically dying, but they are mentally, spiritually, and socially great. They're ready to go. And they're fine with it. And they're okay. And there are other people that are perfectly well physically, but they are not okay. And we have a bit of a case in point of that today. You see, we are not islands. We are meant to be in community with each other. We're meant to interact with other human beings. And when we are not, illness and unwellness abound. So we start this account in the Gospel of Luke. This all begins with an incident. Jesus has just come across the lake with his followers. And this man named Jairus comes to Jesus. He is an administrator of the synagogue. And his daughter, a young woman at this point, because it says she's 12 years old. And I don't know all of the meanings here, but there's some things worth pointing out. She's 12 years old. And in that culture, for both boys and girls, turning 12 was important. Between 12 and 13, I would say. You would either have your bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, and in essence, that was considered the beginning of entering into adult life. It did not mean that you were suddenly an adult, but it meant you began to enter into adult life. A young man would probably begin doing Torah readings in synagogue. That was a big part of it. For young women, they probably, I don't know what their role would have been synagogue-wise. The women, they tended to be kind of off to their own side. But they would have had other roles that they would have begun to take on more, especially in the household. So this young woman, she's on the cusp of adulthood, is suddenly near death. If she dies, well, first of all, she's dead. That's the end of physical health. But that's not where it ends. If she dies, her family will endure untold heartache and mental anguish. And the chain of unwellness will go on. My point is that when one level of wellness is affected, all areas get affected. They are all connected. The Hebrew term for this, for when all things are well, is shalom. The English language, and I would confess right here, I am not bilingual or multilingual in any way. I barely made it through 2 semesters of Spanish in college just to satisfy that requirement, okay? So whenever I say this, I am guilty as well. But the English language is probably one of the least sophisticated languages out there in terms of being able to communicate ideas. If you've ever heard Greek, there's several different words that we all translate as love in English, but in Greek there's all these different kinds because there are different types of love. And in Hebrew they have this word called shalom that we tend to translate as peace. That's a part of shalom. But shalom means so much more. It means wellness, wholeness, completeness. If someone has shalom, they are well in mind, body, and spirit, and those around them are well, and the community is well. And it's kind of that saying of all things are well and all will be well. That is shalom. So Jesus is on his way to go and save this young lady. On the way, Jesus is stuck in a large crowd, and there is a woman who, and this can be a sensitive topic sometimes, but the Bible does not shy away from sensitive topics. She has been hemorrhaging for 12 years. Now let's pause here for a minute. For the amount of time that the young woman that Jesus is on his way to save has been alive, this woman has been socially dead, spiritually, mentally, and physically suffering. I don't know what the correlation is there. I don't think it's the case. Now, you might have noticed that I said she is socially dead. Let me explain without going into too much for you. But I can't emphasize how important this is. For 12 years, this woman, because she's been hemorrhaging, has not been allowed to go to synagogue and worship. She cannot take part in basic social activity like going to the market because she's deemed unclean. So she can't go and worship. She can't go shopping. We don't know anything about this woman's marital status, whether she's married or unmarried, but all I'll say is her state would have prohibited her from either getting married, or if she was married, in all likelihood, her husband would have probably divorced her for one of those reasons that Moses, in his frustration, gave them as consolation. She would not have even been allowed to sit in the same chair as a man because there was fear of contamination and making him unclean. She needs spiritual help, but the very source of spiritual help that she needs, God, is being barred from her by the law. She is in that terrible state of, I need help, but my condition prohibits me from getting the help that I need. She is, for all intents and purposes, stuck in a living hell. This woman, who for the length of time that the girl that Jesus is going to go see has lived in a moment of desperate faith, she reaches out to touch Jesus' robe, believing that that would be all it will take. And she is right. Now Jesus realizes what has happened, and he wants to welcome back this suffering woman into the world of the living. Your faith has made you well. This woman, who up to this point was pushed to the utmost margins of society, is now completely well. Shalom. Because she has been physically healed, she can be socially healed. She can experience spiritual healing. And her mental anguish can come to an end. She is socially alive again and able to rejoin the living and worship God immensely. Now, as all this has happened, as Jesus approaches the home of Jairus, as he's finishing talking to this woman, onlookers come and say, don't trouble the teacher anymore, your daughter is dead. And I can only imagine Jairus asking, why? Why did you stop and make that woman in the street well, but not my daughter? But this is not the end. Jesus has come to make all things new again. He casts out the hired mourners. You see, that was the thing back then. When there would be a death in the family, you were expected to go and hire people to come in and make a whole lot of noise, signifying it. It was kind of like a catharsis for yourself. You hear all of this wailing going on, kind of help represent the pain that you are in. They did this for money. It was very strange by today's standards. Although some of our funerary customs are a bit unusual as well. Jesus casts the hired mourners out with only his closest followers and the parents of the girl. He plucks this young lady from the realm of the dead and gives her back to her parents well and complete. Jesus overcomes death in all of its forms, is making all things new. And yes, again, with this family now, they are both mentally, spiritually, socially, and physically well. We tend to approach these miraculous healings of Jesus from a surface point of view, I'm afraid. We think, wow, look at what Jesus can do. But it is much bigger than that. In these cases here, we see how Jesus looks at the whole individual, all of their needs, and he fulfills them and makes them well in all ways and gives new life. This gets to the heart of what Jesus came to do. In this Lenten season, we can come to Jesus with all of what weighs us down and makes us feel dead. And trust and know that he wants to make us whole. And say to us, as he said to the woman who had been dead, make well of your faith has made you well. Amen.